Welcome to our UI UX Design with Figma series. My name is Sean. I'm the Digital Lounge Manager here, and I will be your instructor through this workshop series. Uh, so this is the first in a three-part series, right? So we're going to start today with just the intro, some basics of design, getting our account set up, getting familiar with the interface and all of that. And then next week, same day of the week, same time, we'll do some more intermediate design techniques. These are going to be things that kind of level up a kind of basic looking thing into something that looks a little bit cooler. And then also ways that you can kind of speed up your workflow so you don't have to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Figma has some really cool things like components and variants that make interaction and prototyping really fun. And then that prototyping and animation is what we're doing in the last week. Figma has been like launching product after product, so there's a lot of new stuff, which is really fun. I'll also show some of those in that last week. Cool, awesome. So for today, we first got to get you set up with your Figma account. So like several other different software packages and companies, they do it in different tiers, right? So they have like a free tier, there's like a paid tier, and then an enterprise tier, and you unlock more features as you go along. What's really nice about Figma is for all university students, they give that pro tier for free. So if you go to figma.com, you'll see on the top bar, I don't have the visual, it's just going to automatically sign me in, but the top bar, there's a pricing tab, okay? So when you click on pricing, you should see three different cards. One that says free, one that says professional, one that says like business or enterprise. And under the professional one, it's kind of hidden. You do have to look for it. It says free for students and educators. Click there. You'll get taken to a new page and there'll be a button that says get verified. So you click the get verified button and then you have to use your USC email address. If you use a Google, like a Gmail, or if you use Yahoo, it's not going to automatically recognize that you're a student. So you'll want to use your university email, and there'll be some stuff that will send to your account. You verify things, stuff like that. Okay. So as you do that, I am just going to kind of share some stuff as like an audio background, but feel free to keep looking, just talking a little bit more of like UX design roles that you might be interested in going in different paths. So the kind of catch-all term of UX designer is covers the whole process from identifying an issue with a product or an app or a workflow, and then uh, like prototyping, doing some research, designing it, testing it, all of this stuff until it's finished. So UX designer is like kind of like a catch-all term that does a bunch of things, sees a whole process through from start to finish. The UI designer, that stands for user interface, encompasses including like sentiment, flows, and how does things go through this whole process. The UI designer is focused solely on the design. So the colors, the fonts, the layout, all of that, the visual aspect is a UI designer. If a company has UX designers, UI designers, it likely means that they're a larger organization, but the smaller organizations will probably just have a UX designer that kind of does everything. But larger companies might have multiple different roles split up. There's also a product designer, which is basically like your UX designer, but adds a little bit of business analysis to it. There's a little bit of business knowledge that you need to know with the product design, a lot more centered on user workflows and testing and analysis and business goals. And we also have a UX researcher. So this is going to be people who are conducting those usability tests. Once you've done a prototype, you want your customers to test it out and make sure it's meeting the goals to solve that problem that you had. And the UX researcher is usually the one that's leading that effort. A UX engineer is for those of you who really like design and something more technical. So the UX engineer is someone who does have that same design sense as a UI designer does, but also knows how to code it and actually implement it into the website or the app or whatever you're doing. And then there's also the UX writer role. This one's pretty specific, really only in those bigger companies that split things up into multiple different specialties. This is the person who's in charge of making sure that any sort of copy or writing or words in the app or the website is clear, that it meets standards, that it makes sense, more of a writing job. So then let's jump into Figma. So we're all on this page now, logged into your account. Cool. So mine's going to look a little bit different than yours because I've had some files before. But yours will probably kind of have the same layout, just not these recent files that I have. So let's just kind of break this down to understand what's all happening. So we have your name up here in the top left. If you click on your name, you're going to see your kind of some basic settings. So theme is if you want a light theme, a dark theme, if you want it to match whatever you have set on your computer. There's our settings if you want to do some different things like changing your name or notifications or stuff like that. That's under your settings. There's also this desktop app. So Figma is both in the browser and on the desktop. It's the same exact application. You can do all of the same things on it. The really only difference that you need to know about is the browser one requires internet connection. The downloaded app doesn't. So if you're going to be like on a plane that doesn't have Wi-Fi and you want to be designing and working things, you'll need the desktop app. But pretty much in all other cases, you'll just need the browser because it's the same exact thing. Then you'll see that there's this thing called the community profile. So Figma has this whole kind of online community where people are posting a ton of things, their designs, they're posting things that you can copy and use. They're posting plugins, they're doing all of these fun things. We'll explore that later. But it's a pretty good thing to know about so that you don't have to do everything from scratch. If someone else did it and they published it, you could just copy it and it's fine. And you can also see that community tab right here. You'll have your recents. This is like any other thing. It'll just show the most recently opened files. You can search through all your files if you have a bunch of them. And then you'll have this, it'll say like your name's team. This is going to be a little bit more important for when you're working with other people on different files. You can have a team account, create these projects, put stuff in, put resources. If you want everyone to stay on brand, you can put all your branding and your assets in there. Basically more just for collaboration. You do get one with the pro version. That's what we signed you up for. And so you get your own personal team, but you can invite other people to collaborate on your files from there. And then we do have this starred section. So if you have a file and you hover over it and you want to favorite it, you can just click the star icon and it'll add over here for some quick, easy access. We do have a bunch of different file types up here, as you can see. So we have this design one. This is where we're going to do most of our work in this workshop series. This is your kind of standard thing, their flagship thing. Think like with Adobe has a bunch of products and Photoshop's the big one. This is that same thing. A Fig Jam is if you are working with some people, maybe like, let's say executives or something who aren't super technical. This is just like an online collaborative whiteboard where you can just like draw things, you can add sticky notes, everyone works on the same thing. Really easy to get non-technical people up here for like a whiteboard situation. There is also Figma slides. This is PowerPoint basically, but using Figma. Then we have Figma Buzz, which is in beta. This is for more for branding teams. This is like asset production, you're creating promotions, digital ads, social media posts, and stuff like that. Figma Site is basically also a beta product that you can publish a website. Previously, with this design one, you can only like design a prototype of the site, but not actually make it live. You would just take that design and then have to hand it off to a developer who would make your website. This one, you can make your website directly in Figma and publish it, and people can go to the URL and access it and do all the stuff. And then Figma Make is their AI thing. So if you like ChatGPT, if you like Adobe Firefly, it's the same thing. AI generation. And then there is this button if you want to import anything. You can start something with Photoshop or Canva or stuff like that, and then import it through this way. It's probably more easy to just start it in Figma, but you do have the option if you need. Okay, so let's start our new file. So we're going to click on this design button up here. If you hover over it, there'll be a plus icon and you click it and you go to this very bland workspace. So Figma starts very bare bones. Once you start adding more stuff, we're going to see a lot of things populate as we go along. But yeah, let's go through this one, a new interface. So this is our design file. This is where we're going to pretty much be spending the rest of the workshop series. This main area in the middle, this is our canvas. This is where you're doing most of your designing. And we have a toolbar here at the bottom that shows all of these different tools available. Some of these are collapsed into groups. So if you see a little down Tyndall by a tool and you click on it, you'll see some more tools that are nested within there. And don't worry, we're going to be going through pretty much all of these. So on the right over here, this is where we're going to see different settings and properties of stuff. Right now, it doesn't look like much, but as we add stuff, this is going to dynamically change. So if you add a rectangle, for example, you're only going to get settings that apply to shapes. If you add an image, you'll get different settings, all of that fun stuff. And if you notice your initial up here, you can add multiple people to work on a Figma design project at the same time, working in the same file. And this is how you can tell if you have multiple people working. So if you've invited someone and they're here, their initial will also show up here. And you can click on it and go exactly to where they're working. Over here, the left area, it's mostly going to be your menu options under this untitled one right here. That's our file name, or also underneath our Figma icon. We have a bunch of different menu options. And then you do have a bunch of different ways to organize your files and your assets. And we'll go through a bunch of these here. So obviously having untitled is not a very helpful project name. So just to change it, you just gotta click inside of it and you'll have your text box open and you can just name your file whatever you want it to be. I'm just gonna say Fall 2025 Workshop Series. And then you can either click outside or hit enter or whatever to just rename your file. The amazing thing with Figma is that it autosaves every time you do something. And so you don't have to go file save or do anything like that. Okay. You'll also notice that we have our pages down here. So you can have different pages for different types of designs. So you could have, let's say you're doing a mobile app and a website design that is for the same company. You can have a page that's the mobile app and one that's the website. You can have a page. I normally like to have one that's kind of like a playground as well. So I'm just testing out different things quickly. And then if I like it, I just copy and paste it into the actual design. You can leave it as page one. You can rename it whatever you want it to be. And then layers, pretty typical coming from other design things, the same layers as every other design app. Once we add content, this is determining the order that they are. So you can have things that are overlapping, and if it's higher in the layers panel, it means it's in front. If it's lower in the layers panel, it's behind. We'll see that in a little bit. Okay, enough of me yapping about things. Let's actually start do stuff. So the basis of Figma is called a frame. So if you are from like Illustrator, it might be artboards. I don't know what Canva calls them. But frames are your best friend in Figma. And you can see it down here as this second option. And a little tip, as you hover over a tool, you'll see this little letter. That's the keyboard shortcut. So if you're ever wanting to just memorize a bunch of keyboard shortcuts, make it super quick, just hover over something, you'll see the keyboard shortcut for this. So for this one, it's F. You can also click on this tool. And you'll notice that our settings changed over here. So Figma does have a bunch of kind of pre-built templates for different devices. Most of what you're doing in Figma, designing websites and apps, are for specific devices. And here you can pick the specific device that you're looking to do. and get the exact size that you need. So you can also, if you want to, just click and drag somewhere and create one of your own custom size. But we're going to use one of the default sizes. So under desktop, I'm going to click the desktop one. And you get this very basic frame. So this is going to be your idea of putting things on the screen, designing the actual website or app or whatever. Cool? So just like our name up here and that page, you can name, oh, yeah. So how do you switch to the dark mode? Yeah, so you can switch to the dark mode from back in, if you go back to files, and then you click on your name under theme, there's dark. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so just like the naming of our files and our pages, you can also name each of your frames. So here where it says desktop 1, if you just double click inside of it, you can rename it to something that's a little bit more helpful. We'll do like homepage, and then you can click enter to do that. Now, as you add your frames, you can resize them after you've done it. Most of the time, you're only going to be resizing vertically, so up and down. This allows you to create the scroll stuff. So this is like a desktop size, but if you know that you're going to have more content than fits in here, and we definitely will, you can just click and drag on the bottom to add more for your canvas. Okay, so probably more important in this UX design than in like graphic design and other stuff is a layout. You want things to be pretty structured. You want things to be consistent from page to page. And so Figma allows you to add what are called grids that help you more easily place things more consistently. And so I'm going to show you how you can set up a grid and make it super easy to add content. So you'll want to select your frame. So if you see that it's gray, it means that it's not selected. But if you hover over the title and you click on it, it'll be selected. And then down over here in our design tab settings, you'll see this layout guide. And let's click the plus icon, and that's going to add our grid. By default, they have a 10 pixel grid, and I always change this. I don't like using this, but if you like it, go for it. What I find is more helpful is to change it into columns. So I'm looking at the horizontal layout. So with this selected, if you deselected it, you can also click on this settings button right by that name of grid. And where it says grid, if you click on it, you can change it to columns and to rows. We're going to do both of these. And if you click on columns, you'll see that these columns are created throughout the document. Yeah, no worries. If you click on make sure you have your frame selected. Under layout guide in your design tab, if you have it on the grid, if you click on this button to the left of it, and then underneath where it says grid at the top. Yeah, you're welcome. So the first thing that we can see is that it defaults to 5 columns. And if you click on here, you can see different presets, or you can also do auto. And I'm going to select 12 columns. Can anyone guess as to why 12? 12 is kind of like a magic number here.
You have thirds and fourths.
Exactly. So 12 is divisible by a bunch of other numbers. So you can have one element that goes across all 12. You can have ones that cross 6, so it's the half. You can do ones that cross 4, so it's thirds. It's a bunch of different layouts that you can do with 12. Now, I usually leave the default 10 opacity red columns just because it always reminds me that I have my grid on if I want to turn it off. If you would like to change it, you can. If you click on this little box right here, you can pick which color you want to change it to, either through this color picker or this hue wheel. You can also put in the hex code of the color. And then the 10%, which we see right here, is how opaque or transparent it is. Opaque would be 100%, so fully colored. Transparent would be 0%, so you don't see anything. Generally want to see it a little bit, but you want to be able to see the other content more. So 10% is a pretty good value. Then we have type. And so type is just basically how do we want our columns to be set up. So right now it's stretch. And we're going to leave it at that because what that does is Figma looks at the size of our frame and dynamically makes 12 equal sized columns based on our frame size. But if you were to switch it to left, your 12 columns would start from the left and you would be able to pick how thick each column is. Right starts on the right and center starts from the center. But we'll leave it at stretch. Your margin is going to be the distance between the leftmost column and the left side of the frame and the rightmost column and the right side of the frame. So just the space on either side. Generally, you want a little bit of a margin just so that if someone's on a different device, it's not going to be too different, even though we're using a desktop size. You know, I have a bigger Mac than I see some of you do. And so we want to make sure that there's a little bit of padding there. So where it says 0, if you just click inside there, you can change it. I'm going to change mine to 50. And you'll see that that adds a little bit of a buffer on your sides. And then gutter is going to be your distance between your columns here. Typically you want a little bit there, but that doesn't mean that you can't put stuff in the gutter or can't have things stretch over the gutter. I'm going to set this one to 25. And these values are just ones that I played around with until I found ones that I liked. There's no magic number here. Right. Any questions about our columns? Cool. So we're actually going to add another layer to our layout guide. So where it says layout guide, with this frame still selected, you click on the plus icon again. You'll see that it has grid, but we can change it to rows. So doing the same thing as we did before, but using rows instead of columns. Now we're going to set this one up a little bit differently because right now the rows are stretching based on how tall or short my frame is, but that's going to create an inconsistent thing as I start adding more and more and more, and I'll have to go back and redo all these things. So instead of having it be 5 rows stretched out across, switch the 5 to auto. Keep the same color. Instead of stretching them across, we're going to say start from the top. And so now what this is going to do is it's going to start from the top and add enough rows that fill up our frame no matter how tall or small it is. Okay. Obviously, those are very small. They're not that useful. So let's set them to 100 for the height, and that's going to change how thick they are. Your offset here is going to be how far from the top do you want these to just be kind of pushed down a little bit. Again, I usually like to have a little bit of space at the top. So I'm going to do 50 as my offset. And then gutter is going to be your space between your rows. Okay, so we're going to switch that from 20 to 25 like we did for our columns. Okay. We all good with that? Awesome. So as you can imagine, if you have an app or a website, you're going to want to have multiple pages. Each individual page or screen would be a different frame. However, if I were to add a new frame over here, you'll notice that it doesn't have my grid. And if I wanted to add it, I would have to repeat all of those steps again, which is not ideal. So we're going to save this as what's called a style, okay? So with your homepage frame selected, under your layout guide, you'll notice this 4 circle or square button right by that add icon. And if you click on this, we can use what are called styles. And you can use styles for your guides, you can use them for colors, you can use them for text, and you can use them for effects. So here, we don't have any because we haven't created one yet. But if you click on the plus button right here, we're going to create our layout guide style using the existing settings that we have. And so I'm just going to call this website layout in here. Okay. So if you're a little lost, click on this 4 square icon, which opens this. You add the plus button, which gives us this, and you name it, and you can click create style. Now you'll notice here that it just has our style created right here. So now if I were to go and add another frame and I want to add my guides under layout guide, I can click on that 4 square button again, and you'll see that one that we created there, our website layout. and when I click it, it automatically gets applied. Okay. So to make one, you do the one that we already did. There'd be under layout guide, there'd be a 4 square button. You click that, it opens up this little menu. You click the plus button and then you name it and you click save or create style. Can't remember what it was. And then on your new frame, under layout guide, you click that 4 square button again and you pick the one that you just created.
So I see that the plus button disappears when you added a style. Does that mean that if you have a style that you want to add like another column or something to, you can't do that?
Correct.
Okay.
So these are basically kind of presets that make it easy to change a lot of things at once. Could be a little bit more helpful with colors and text, which I'll show in a little bit. But if you wanted to make some changes, you'll notice this unlink button right by it. So you can unlink it and then you have the full editing again. Yes. Yeah, of course. No worries. So are you here?
Yes.
Cool. So to create your layout guide, you click on this 4 square button right here, and then you'll click on this plus icon, and then you'll type in a name and you'll click create style. I named mine website layout. Yeah, you can name it whatever you want though. Yep. And then if you create a new frame, either using this button down here or the F key, and let's do another desktop. With this new frame, you can go down to the layout guide setting again. And instead of clicking the plus icon, you click the 4 square one again, and you should see your website layout there. Yeah. Oh, no worries. Cool. Let's do, we all got on that? Cool. So now you'll notice if you have nothing selected, you actually do get to see all of your guides over here as well, or your styles. So I can see my style right here. If you do want to change anything about it, you can. So let me actually undo this real quick. Under your styles, you'll notice this little kind of slider button. You click on it and you can edit it. And so now, whenever we edit stuff from here, it's going to apply to every single thing that we have set up with this style. One thing you might want to do, for example, you'll see these eye icons. That toggles visibility. Do you want to see it or do you not want to? So if I untoggle rows, you'll notice my rows disappear from both of my frames. And that's because I have this website layout style applied to multiple frames. And so I can just change everything at once. This is super helpful when you are designing and you maybe pick what you think is the best blue ever. You're like, I've never seen a blue like this. It's so cool. You send it to someone and they're like, I hate that blue. Change it. If you applied the same blue style to everything, you can just quickly change that blue style to what they want, and then it updates everything at once, and you don't have to go and click every single thing that has that blue.
So if I wanted to create a website but have like 3 different color waves,
Mhm.
could you like assign everything to a style and then duplicate all of those styles and edit those?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you can have a ton of color styles and text styles. You can only have one assigned at a time, though. This is the thing. Yeah. All right. Feeling good? Cool. So we can start getting to adding some elements and some text and designing and colors. If you're like me, the choice of colors and fonts and stuff is always the longest part of the process. So I'm going to show you the resources that I use. I did pick some ones that we can do for today, so you can follow along with me, or you can pick your own colors and make it truly your own. So for colors, I use a website called realtimecolors.com. Realtimecolors.com. And if you go to it, it is a kind of color palette visualizer. And what's really nice is it does show it on a sample site. So I can kind of already see how this kind of blue color looks on a website. And they do have a Figma plugin. We're not going to use it. I'll let you explore that. But I'm just going to use this to get some color ideas. What's really nice is that I can just hit the spacebar button on my keyboard and it's going to randomize. And so how I pick colors, including the ones for this workshop series, I went to this website and I hit spacebar until I found something that I liked. Now, let's say you get to one and you really, really, really like this primary orange color. If you click on this little lock button by it, it locks that color in place and then you can randomize around it. And so you can keep going until you find exactly what you're looking for. They do also have a dark and light thing, so you can switch between and it'll change the colors to kind of like keep them in line, but a little bit more fine-tuned for whatever you're trying to do. And what's really nice, click on a color that you like, and you'll see what's called as hex code. It's a hexadecimal value that identifies the specific color. And we're going to use these in our Figma one to get the exact color that we want. Okay. They also do have a fonts thing you'll see down here. I actually don't really use this one. I haven't played around with it. Feel free to. The one that I typically use is Google Fonts. So you can either just search Google Fonts, you can go to fonts.google.com, and this one just has a bunch of different font types, almost 2,000 different font families. Google Fonts is automatically integrated with Figma, so all of the fonts that you see here are already in Figma. And like this Montserrat one is the one that I'm going to be using, but you can pick something else if you would like. And so yeah, I just go here for font inspiration. Cool, awesome. So let's go back to Figma. So with nothing selected, and you'll know that nothing's selected because you can see all of your styles over here. If you click on that plus icon right here, you can create a style without even having to like input a rectangle, without having to make a frame or anything like that. And so we can add stuff here. We'll just add them as we go along and then save them as styles. But if you already know what colors you want from clicking spacebar a couple of times, you can input them here. Yeah, sound cool? Awesome. So first off, to get started with actually adding some elements to our design, we're going to be doing this wireframe to start. Very basic shapes. A wireframe is a type of deliverable that you would make as a UX designer that is very, as you can tell, low detail. There's nothing on here basically but random shapes. And this is just to get a sense of the layout of your website or your app without having to worry about colors and fonts and stuff. And then we're going to use this as our template to go forward. Cool. All right. So let's start making our shapes. And so you can use your rectangle tool down here. This can be clicked on. You can use the R key on your keyboard. And to make a rectangle, you can either click just to make a perfect 100 by 100 square, or you can click and drag to make a specific size that you want. And this is why I always set up our layout grids first, because now it's really easy to make a rectangle the exact size that you want. So for here, I'm going to make one that's in our columns, and I'm going to have it span 4 columns and 1 row. Okay, pretty easy, right? So before we get too far with adding different shapes, I'm going to go to my website layout. I'm going to toggle off my grid, not removing anything, just using the eye icons here. So to do that, you can click outside of everything, click on this slider button for your grid, and then just click these eye icons. That just says, hey, I don't want to see this right now. Yeah, for this, for rows.
Can I see the columns?
Cool. Okay, so now I want to zoom in a little bit. So you can use either, I don't actually know if there's a zoom tool, but you can, if you're on Mac, you can hold down Command. If you are on Windows, I think it's Control, and then you click the plus button and you'll zoom in. And then if you need to zoom out, it's just minus. So Command or Control, plus or minus to zoom in or out. And then you'll notice if you zoom in that the rectangle is all the way over here. How do I get over there? If you hold down the space bar, your select tool changes to the hand tool, and this allows you to move around your canvas. Okay, so holding down space, you can click and drag to move around your canvas and get to where you want it to be. And that's not moving any of the content, that's just moving my view. But if you wanted to move content, you do the same thing without holding down space. So now if we click on our rectangle, you'll notice that our settings change. As I mentioned, these settings change dynamically based on whatever content that you are putting into your design. So we have some position stuff up here, and these are going to be your alignment tools. So if you want something to be aligned fully to the left or fully to the right or fully in the center, you can click those. That way you don't have to keep on dragging and be like, is that centered or not? I'm gonna Command or Control, if you're on Windows, Z a couple times to get it back to where we are. That's our undo keyboard shortcut. So these are gonna be that I always get lost with vertical and horizontal. This is going left and right, horizontal. This is going up and down. So if you want it to be top, on the bottom, or in the middle, same thing, but it's just going the other way. Here you can also specify where on the frame you want it to be to the pixel. So this is currently at position 50, 50, which makes sense because we had our offset for our rows at 50 and we had our margin at 50, and we just drew from over there. But you can also specifically type in numbers here. A little trick with Figma too is if you hover over where it says X or Y, you can just click and drag it and it just moves it like so. Okay. Here we have what are called constraints. We'll talk a little bit more about this next week because it can get a little funky and confusing. But this is basically determining when you resize your frame, like if you add stuff to the bottom or to the left or the right, where do you want this content to move, if anywhere? So this is basically saying, hey, I want you to keep the same distance on the left and on the top. So if I am expanding my frame to the left, it's going to stay 50 pixels from the left. Or if I expand it top, it's going to stay that way. But if I go to the right, it's not going to move. Or if I go down, it's not going to move. And that's because these constraints of left and top are just saying, hey, keep this same 50 pixel distance from the left and from the top. Don't worry, we'll play more with it next week. We do have our rotation right here. So this is if you want to rotate around. If you know you just want it to be flipped, you can click the flip, and then there's these different flips over here as well. So this does 90 degrees to the right. This just flips it this way. The other one flips it up and down. Layout's your size. So how tall, how wide you want this rectangle to be. If you click here on this button to the far right, that means that it's locked with the aspect ratio. So as you expand or decrease, it's always going to be the same ratio between your width and your height. If you don't have that, it just changes willy-nilly, however, whatever you do. Under appearance, we got some stuff here. So the first one, 100%, is how opaque or how pigmented this is. If you start to make that less and less and less, it goes more transparent. And then this one right here, this is super helpful, especially because design nowadays is very rounded and bubbly. This is where you change your corner radius. So this is going to be these edges. Right now, set to 0 means it's going to come to a point. If you start to increase that, it's going to start to be more and more rounded on all of the different corners. You also will notice as you hover over that there's this thing right here. This does the same thing. You can just click and drag to move that corner smoothing. If you want to design something that has different corner radiuses around, that not everything's uniform, you click on this button right here. To the right of our corner radius in our appearance, you click on that and you'll get your top left, top right, bottom right. Okay. Fill is going to be what color that you want this to be. So same thing with our layout guide and grid. You can add your styles. You can do that right here. You can also change the color by clicking on this color box. And you can fill this rectangle in a bunch of different ways. We'll go through some more color stuff later. There's a solid color first, so you can pick a specific color that you're looking to do. You can also do a gradient is going to be your second option. Your third is if you want it to be a pattern. The fourth one is going to be if you want to fill it with an image. So maybe you want to like create a custom shape and then fill that custom shape with an image. You can do that right here. And then there is also a video one. I'm just going to do solid color. I'll leave it at the default. This may be slightly changed from me playing around with the color, but I'm just leaving it like so. Stroke is going to be the border. So if you add a stroke, you'll notice it's going to start off with a 1 pixel black solid border around it. And from here, you can change the color. You can change if it's starting on the inside, the outside, based on the center. You can say how thick it is. You can do individual. So if you want to just do it on the top or the bottom or the left or the right, don't worry, we'll play around with this too. I'm gonna click minus to get rid of it. You have effects. This is going to be things like your drop shadow, your inner shadow, your blurs. We'll do that here also later. And then you can also export. So this is just exporting the rectangle right now. You probably don't want to do that because it's just a bland rectangle right now. But later on, you might have like a little section that you want to export as an image and say, hey, how does this section look? So I'm going to go back to my website layout. I'm going to click on that edit style, and I'm going to turn back on my rows and my columns here. Okay. Now this is just so light. So I'm going to change the color just so it's darker so I can kind of see it. So I just clicked on it, went on fill, and changed it darker. Now it's a little bit easier to see. And now what I'm going to do is I want to duplicate this, but you can copy paste if you want to. So click on it, you can Command or Control C, and then click somewhere else, Command or Control V, and that'll paste just immediately where you're at, and then you can click and drag and move it. If you want to create a second rectangle, I think the coolest trick in Figma, and this is in some other design tools too, if you hold down the Option key for Mac or the Alt key for Windows, and you hover over your rectangle, you'll notice that there's like a double selector. If you just click and drag, it's going to duplicate it immediately, and you can just drop it wherever you want. So I'm going to put this over here. This can be a different menu item, but I'm going to shrink it horizontally. So I'm just going to click on this left thing, and I'm going to move it to where it's only spanning 2 columns. And then I'm going to use that same trick of Alt or Option, click and drag to just populate 2 more menu items, like so. Were we successful with that? These two? Weird.
I moved, you don't have draw or something.
Oh, that should be fine. We're not going to use draw. I've never used it. I think it's literally just if you want to like play around and draw on it. I don't know why I have it, but you all don't. Because I have the same plan that you all do. Yeah. So basically what I did is I clicked and I did Option, click and drag, and then I just resized it. Yeah, and then I just duplicated those. Oh, there's my drawing. All right. So now, as we have this, I want you to take a look over in our layers panel. So as we add elements to our design, they're going to be added as layers. By default, it's going to give you a very nondescript title. So there's rectangle 1, rectangle 2, rectangle 3, rectangle 4. And I probably want a better sense of like what this actually is. So if I click on this first one and it says rectangle 1, I can just double click in here and rename my layer. So this is going to be my logo, let's say. And then now as I'm looking through my layers, I know what I'm clicking on. You can also, if something is like to the point where you're like, I don't want anyone touching this, including myself, I don't want to mess something up. In your layers panel, you can lock something. And this just basically means that you can't even click on it. You can't select it. It's locked in place. No one can mess up with your beautiful rectangle. Okay. So I'm just gonna quickly change the names of my different rectangles to like what would be in like a navigation section like this is gonna be. So rectangle 2 is gonna be my about section. Rectangle 3 is gonna be my projects. And rectangle 4 would be like a contact section. Now I've made all of these elements exactly how I want them to be. And I don't want to accidentally mess this up going forward. And I want those to be grouped together because these are they're a section in and of itself. So if I click and drag and do a multi-select over all of my rectangles, and you'll notice what's selected in my layers panel on the left because it's highlighted in this blue color. If you use Command G or Control G on Windows, it puts them into this group. And this allows you to then now move these as a single unit. So there's still different elements, but allows you to put things together so that they're easier to move and to keep together. Okay. And then I'm just going to go and double click where it says group 1 and rename it to navigation. So I know what I'm seeing on my homepage. All of these elements are still individually editable. You can either click on this Tyndall by the group name and see all of your things here and click on them to select them, or you can double click inside of your group. And that's just how you can make some further changes to those elements.
How do you group those?
If you select them all and then do Command G. Yes. Yep. If you ungroup, you can right click on yours. I think it's control click if you're using a trackpad. And then there will be this ungroup button. You can also apparently use your command or control. I think that's backspace. Okay. Are we ready for something more exciting than just rectangles? Cool. Let's move on to some text. So text, you can either click on T on your keyboard, or you can click on the T icon down here. And if you click somewhere, it'll just start a text box like normal. You can also click and drag to set a size for your text box. So I'm gonna do mine where it is 6 columns wide and 3 rows tall. But again, you can do whatever you want. And then now I have this whole text box to write something. So we're just kind of playing around with like a mock portfolio type website. So think of a headline for what your portfolio website might be. The sample that I'm going to use is just a UX designer based in Los Angeles. Now it's going to be very small, as you can tell by default. Now, if you try to make any of your changes over here in the typography tab, you're going to notice nothing actually happens. And that's because right now, where our cursor is, it's selecting nothing. It's just like an active cursor within your text box. So you can either click and drag to select all of your text, or if you click outside of your text box, it selects the text box as a whole and will apply any of the changes that we're making to the whole entire text box. Okay, so now over here in our typography tab, we got this new one because we're working with text. Where it says enter, that's going to be your font family. So there's a bunch of fonts in here. I'm going to use that one that I pointed out in the Google fonts of the Montserrat. You can again pick whatever you want. I'll leave that if you want to follow along. So Montserrat, and you can click on it and apply that specific font family to your text. It's just like any other text change. Where it says regular, this is going to be the weight and the italicization of your text. So regular is going to be your default, and then you can go thinner than regular or you can go thicker. Some fonts may not have other options as a warning. So it just really depends on what font you're choosing. I'm going to pick the semi-bold. You can, again, pick whatever you want. There's also all of these italic options right here. And then there's this really fun, crazy thing called variable fonts, which we will not be covering, but you can follow along somewhere else if you would like. Then where it says 12, this is going to be your font size. So again, you can either click and pick a specific default size, or you can type in a specific number. I'm just going to change mine to 64 so that it looks a little better. Here you have your line height where it's set to auto. This is going to be the distance between these lines of text. And then here you have your letter spacing. So this is going to be the distance between each individual letter in your text. You have your typical alignment options. So left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned. And then you can also align them to the top, the middle, or the bottom of your text box. Okay. I'm going to leave this pretty basic like so. And just like we did with the layout guides, I'm going to click on this 4 square menu. And again, I have no text styles, but I'm going to click the plus icon to add. And then here is where you can name this text style that you want to use. I'm going to name it page title. And so now whenever I create text on a different page, it'll be super easy to just apply my page title style, and I don't have to redo all of that work. So just to show you how that works, create a text box on our other frame. Let's say I do it doesn't really matter. By default, it is actually going to use our page title one because we just created it and we just used it. So here I can now say hello or something like that. And it's using all of the same styles as we just created. Again, if you want to change it, you can. You can just either click this detach style to unlink it from that style and make specific edits to this, or you can go to your styles, click outside in this canvas, see page title, do your customizer, and make changes that apply to all of the text with that style. Cool. So now when I've seen some websites, they like to have this big title with like one or two words differently colored than something else. And so if you want to do something like that, you can just double click inside your text box. And I'm going to click and drag and highlight this UX designer text. And then down here in the fill, I'm going to change it. So I'm going to change mine to this kind of dark brownie type yellow. And so where it says the 00000000, this is that hex code for pure black. But with the real-time colors that I showed you, if you click on that color, you'll see the hex code there. You can copy and paste into here, and then you'll have the specific color you're looking for. The one that I'm going to use is A98743. And I'm going to hit enter, and that'll change my color to that color code that I found. And again, I just went to real-time colors, hit spacebar a bunch until I found one. I did realize after I made this whole thing, I did use kind of UCLA type colors, so I apologize for that. But you can switch it to cardinal red if you want. Now I'm going to save this color as a style. So as I applied that, I click on this 4 square menu, I click on the plus, and then I can save this as a dark yellow. So the same thing that we did with our guides and with our typography, it's just using a color one instead. Awesome. Let's keep going. So the next thing I might want in this kind of section up top, it's the kind of hook of the page. It's usually called a hero section. Is I want to have a big picture that shows something. As we're in like the early stages of this design, we probably don't have the pictures that we need, right? But there's something really cool with Figma, and that's called plugins. So across all different types of software, plugins are just additional functionality that comes not out of the box. So it's things that you do have to add on. And Figma has a bunch of available plugins, including one to just find stock images, and you can place them in there and have something that shows this design layout. To get to plugins, you can either click on this Figma icon up in your top left and see plugins right here, or you can also right click anywhere and there'll be plugins right here. Now, you probably haven't run any plugins because you just created your Figma account today. So you'll probably only see manage plugins. And if you click on that, you'll be able to find a bunch of different plugins that you can activate and use in Figma. The one that we're going to use is this one right here called Unsplash. Unsplash is also a website. You can just search up unsplash.com, but we're going to use the one directly in Figma. It is a place where photographers will put their photos on there with the expectation that other people are going to use them. The only thing that they normally ask is that you like credit them. There's like a little default like from this person on Unsplash, but because we're not really publishing this or anything, it doesn't matter. You can just take photos. So if you find Unsplash and you run it, you should get this little pop-up window. Cool. So you can either search for a specific image that you want. There's also these kind of categories, these tags. Because I'm just basing mine off of like a UX designer in Los Angeles, I'm just going to search up Los Angeles. And if I press enter, I will get all of these different stock images that I can use. Yep, completely free. Yes. Yeah. The one caveat is some people will post things and they want to make money that you have to pay for. You'll notice this little icon in the top left for those, or where it says unlock. These you have to be like a paid member of Unsplash to use, but anything that doesn't have that, you can just use. So I like this one. So I'm just gonna click and drag and drop it into my design and it'll load in there. Now you'll notice that this image, its layer's name is unsplash colon and then a bunch of gibberish. So I'm just gonna double click on this and rename it. I'm just gonna say Los Angeles image. And then I'm gonna position this on my frame. By default, it goes outside of your frame here. So you may need to click and drag and reorder it in your layers panel. And if you hover over where it says homepage and you release, it just adds that to your frame. Because our frame by default has clip content enabled, what that means is if I start to move it over my frame, it kind of crops it, right? So what I did is it was up here, kind of in the ether, and then I clicked and dragged until I highlighted over homepage, and then I dropped it. And then it should go underneath there. And then now I'm just going to position it. And this is how you get those guides where it kind of does that little bit of snapping. It has to be in that specific frame. And then now I can just resize my image to be the size I want it to be, which is probably around here-ish. And you can play around. Okay. My homepage size is right here. So if you click on homepage, the width is 1440. I probably don't want to change this because in web design, app design, the most important thing is the width because a user can't dynamically change their phone as they're seeing your content. The height doesn't fully matter. It just depends on how much content you're having up and down.
Just to cover some of your.
Oh, so what probably happened is if you click on homepage, does it show in your fill right here? Yeah, so you can click that minus and that gets rid of the image. And then if you just add a new fill of like white, it'll just still be that. You can also just like to avoid that, you can like drop it over here if you want. All right. Any questions? Cool. So we're gonna do another plugin because maybe you don't know the words that you want to use or the copy. So we're going to use this plugin called Lorem Ipsum. It's that kind of like Latin gibberish generator. So if you want to just have some placeholder content of like, hey, I know I'm going to have text that's this size, but I just don't know what the text is, you can quickly generate that. Yeah.
You can like set the size of your text to the size of the text box. So when you like adjust the text box, the text automatically.
There is, I believe, if you go to, I believe there is. Let me just quickly investigate. There might not be actually, but that sounds like something it should have. They definitely do it where it's like the alignment can be, but maybe not the size. Yeah, if you is it in here? Do you see it? Like yeah, you can just move it up and that just it could be. Okay. If that what that might be is if you click on your image and then you click this like teardrop icon in appearance, it might be if you want to change it to normal. Does that work? If you turn off your grid, does it look better? Yeah, these are the blend modes right here. So normally like pass through or normal is the standard. If you turn off your grid visibility, does it look better or is it still like a blending? To turn off the visibility? So if you click on like outside and then under layout guide styles, do you have website layout or whatever you named it? And then click on the sliders and then here on the eye icon, you can toggle it off.
Okay, so our image is stopped.
Okay, yeah. It might just be like one of those like trick of the eye color thing. Yeah, when you export like an image or you share with people, even if you have your grid turned on, the grid doesn't show for them. And so it's sometimes helpful to turn it off to just kind of see what it looks like on the thing. Okay, cool. So to do that, that Latin gibberish generator, if you click on your text tool and just add a text box somewhere. I want to work without the grid right now so that it's a little bit better. So I'm just going to click and make some sort of a text box. And I'm going to click outside of it, or it doesn't allow me to do this. Okay, we'll just play around. So just make a big text box and right click or go to the Figma icon and then click plugins. And then you'll have to do manage plugins and search for it, but it's called this Lorem Ipsum and it's by this div riots. And when you click on it, you get this pop up. And I think actually now we have to have that pop up. And then you do this. There we go. So with that Lorem Ipsum plugin popped up, create your text box. And you can either use this to say, hey, I want this many sentences. Like if you know it's going to be like a 2-sentence description or something, you can change it to that. You can also do characters or words or paragraphs. You can also do this auto generate, which will dynamically add the perfect amount of text for your text box. So when I do that, it's like this. And then that way you don't have to just go like this on your keyboard and have random letters. It actually looks somewhat like text.
So that's how you UX designers do that?
Yeah. Yeah. There's one last plugin I want to show you, and that's called Iconify. So if you right click or again go up to your Figma, go to plugins, manage plugins, and it's Iconify. It's very similar to Unsplash, where we did the photos, but this one is for icons. So if you want to add icons to your site or your app, but you don't want to learn how to design your own icons, you can just click here and they're going to have a bunch here. They have a bunch of different packs, but you can also just search for something. So maybe you want to have like a home screen icon and you can just search home and you'll get a bunch of options here. Okay, so on plugins, go to manage plugins, and then it's this Iconify. Okay.
Do Iconify, that's if
Mhm.
you want to import it as a frame or import it as a component.
Okay. So with the frames, as you go, it'll be like this. So it's kind of like the frame that we did. More like advanced designers will have frames within frames within frames within frames. And so it just shows up as this where you can then resize it within its frame. A component is one of those things that we're going to learn next week, where it's reusable pieces of design that kind of similar to styles you create once and then you can drag and drop elsewhere. You can do either, essentially, is what I'm saying.
So you just like import.
Yep, either one works. You'll still get the same content. Okay. Now I want us to do a little bit of a challenge project, I guess. We're going to put a lot of this stuff together. And we're going to just make a button. And the button's going to have a background. It's going to have a stroke. It's going to have text. We're going to align it and do all that fun stuff. And then I'm going to use that and we're going to look at some effects. Okay. So you can do this with your grid on or off. Grid on if you want it to be super specific. Grid off if you want to see it better. We're just going to do this so that you can see it better. So let's start off by creating that button background of our rectangle. So I'm going to click on my rectangle tool and I'm just going to click and drag to make kind of like a button type shape. And then we're going to change our fill and we're going to change this to that dark yellow color that we did. So I'm going to click on my apply styles and then I can just click on dark yellow. Now I'm going to click on my rectangle, or you can still keep it selected. And over here under appearance, we have our rounded corners. So you can type in a specific number, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hover over the icon for corner radius, and I'm going to click and drag to the right. So that's just going to increase, and I'm going to increase until it can no longer be rounded because it is perfectly round on my corners. Okay, what's that? Yeah, so under fill, there should be the 4 menu item, and then we have our color style for dark yellow. We are going to take a second to learn a little bit more about our strokes. So if you click on the plus by stroke, again, that's going to add that default 1 pixel solid black border. But I'm going to change the color and I'm going to change it to be, let's do the other yellow that I found. So where it says our 6 zeros, I'm just going to change that to F7C 5, 4, 8. Again, you can pick whatever color. And as I press enter, I get this kind of brighter yellow here. Now again, inside, center, and outside determines where your stroke grows or shrinks. So inside means that if I increase the stroke width, it's going to start filling more and more on the inside of my shape. If I do outside, it goes more and more on the outside or closer in. If I do center, it's evenly split between the two. Make sense?
Wait, how should make it so fast?
So underneath here where they have your stroke weight number, I just click on the icon and I drag it left or right. But you can also set a specific number. So I'm going to do mine outside because I want to leave enough room in the actual button for things. And I'll just do, let's say 6. Okay. We all something that looks like this? Awesome. I'm going to click on T. You can also press T on your keyboard. And I'm going to click and I'm going to type in what I want to do. So I'm going to do view project, let's say. And I'm going to click outside to select the whole text box. And it's huge compared to what I was doing. And so we have our page title set because that's what we last did. but I can click on this cancel button basically, and then it allows me to change these as I want to do. I'm going to change my font from Montserrat to Open Sans. I'm going to change semi-bold to regular. You can see that this font has different options than the other one that we did. It just basically is like whatever the font developers made. I'm going to change this down. So I'm going to say, let's say, I feel like 24 would fit in there. And then I'm going to just move it so it's somewhere around my button. I can see. Good. Cool. So now I'm going to click and drag on both. And if you remember from earlier, we did these kind of like left align, center align, right align. When we did those with one element selected, it goes to the frame that it's on. When you do with two or more elements selected, it goes relative to each other. So now when I press this align horizontal centers, it's going to make sure that those are perfectly even left and right. And then when I do the align vertical centers, which is this one over here, it goes perfectly up and down. Okay. So those alignment ones, if you have one element selected, it goes to the frame. If you have multiple selected, it goes to each other. Now, let's say you wanted to align this button now center in the frame. That's when you'd use a group. So you do your Command G, you make your group, and then now if I select my group and I do my center, it's going to go perfectly in the center of my frame. Okay. So now going back to my group down here, I opened it and I'm going to select on this rectangle 1 so that I am selecting my rectangle. And then now we're going to explore some effects. So if you click on the plus button for effects, by default, you'll get a drop shadow. And it can be a little hard to see at times, but you'll notice it adds this little shadow underneath that. This is pretty commonly used in select the rectangle and you click plus by the effects. This is pretty commonly used in websites and apps, especially with that UX design and consideration. It shows that something is clickable, right? There's those little indicators that you're used to seeing, like text that you hover over and it changes the color. That shows that it's clickable. Buttons, it shows like a little bit of a drop shadow too. And this is how you add that. There is also these other options right here. It used to just be inner shadow, drop shadow, layer blur, and background blur. These can get, the blurs are a little tricky. So inner shadow is if you want the shadow to be coming kind of like a shadow within the element. You don't really use that much. Drop shadow is that kind of, there's something that looks like it's kind of lifting off the screen. Layer blur is if you want the element you're selecting to be blurred out in a little bit or have some sort of a blur effect. And then background blur is going to be the background. You can't really blur pure white with pure white. It just makes more pure white. That's kind of what's happening. You also usually don't use this, in my opinion. Noise adds this little thing, super popular in graphic design, like posters and stuff like that. You're probably not going to use it a ton here. Figma is just trying to like expand its market. So they're like adding these things. This is new. I didn't even see this last semester. And then there's going to be this texture thing. Again, more of a graphic design thing, but we'll keep it at drop shadow. And then same with all the other places in Figma. You click on this button that's right by it and you get your settings. The position is going to be the position of the shadow relative to the element that you're doing. So X is going to be how far right or left the shadow is. Y is going to be how far up or down. Blur is going to be like how blurry do you want it to be or how crisp. If it's at 0, it's going to look like another element. But the more you blur it, the more it kind of looks like a shadow. But you don't need too much blur. And then spread also just expands it all over if you want more of an expanse. And then you can also change the color. Normally, something like a yellow item won't have a pure black shadow type of thing. So you might want to change it to be like somewhat of like a darker yellow, somewhere like this, right? And that's the same kind of color stuff that we were doing before. So I'm going to show you one last thing for today, and that's that Figma community where you can find all of these different assets and play around with them. And so if you open up, let me see if they have it from in here. They might not. So if you click on that Figma icon and you do back to files, this will get us out of our file. No need to save, automatically saves. And then where it says community, if you click here, this is where you have a bunch of templates and design packs and all of these different things. These are some of the examples of that Figma make thing I told you about, that AI stuff of like they used a prompt and it made some design thing. And you can see a bunch of different kind of filters in here. There's some ideas that I want to show you of like where this gets really cool. So if you search up just Chrome, you'll notice that people have designed like a Google Chrome UI so that you can kind of simulate if someone went to your website on the Chrome browser and have that up there. Because, you see mine and my website, I have all of this stuff up here too. So if you want to add that to your design and account for that, you can use something like this desktop browser UI kit to just easily drag and drop. And then that way you don't have to be like, okay, what size is this thing? Let me recreate this icon, etc. Additionally, if you just search up Mac OS or iPhone OS or other things, Apple themselves publishes some stuff. So this one right here is the Mac OS Sequoia UI kit. That's um, one of the Mac OS versions. If you click on something, you'll see this open in Figma. And if I click on open in Figma, I can see this file. And so there will be a cover page on most of these. This is just some of that stuff. There's a getting started section. This one, I believe that Apple's a little funny. They're like, oh, if you are using our kit, you're designing for Apple only or whatever, but it should be fine. Just play around. Changelog is when they add or remove stuff, just to let you know. You can go to examples and you can see all of these different things that they've done that, perfectly simulate what Finder looks like or what Quick Look is or whatever that is. And so highly encourage you to look around, especially looking for like these Mac OS ones or Windows ones or iOS so that you can kind of get those standard icons of stuff. So if I go to like arrow buttons, if I'm designing like a Mac OS app, I have the exact buttons that would be used. Yes. So when you use stuff from the community and you click open in Figma, it creates a copy for yourself. And so you're not screwing over Apple by making changes in here or doing things in here. It's all good. Okay. What questions do people have?
Do you have like playbook for the shortcuts or like the tutorial Figma?
I do not. It has been on my to-do list to make one, but what I normally just do is like as I'm playing around and I'm hovering over things, just trying to use them, you get acclimated to them pretty easily.
Now, can you just like copy and paste into another artboard if you wanted to?
Yeah, so if I like, let's say I like this arrow button and I can copy and I'm gonna go back to my files and if I paste, it should have my arrow button somewhere right there. And so that was just from this thing that I copied. I just hovered over, Command C, went to the other file, Command V to paste in there.
Oh, and it does this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have one last thing that I'm going to show you, and then I will let you go. So, and this is just if you want to preview your site, what you're making. So if I click on the home page title and I click on this play button up here, it'll open up in a new browser tab, and it's simulating this prototype of our website, looking at it. If you go over to preview, it does it in a new little tab for you if you want it floating instead. And then if you go over to the prototype tab and you do show prototype settings, you'll see it says no device. That's why it looks like this, just this bland thing right here. But let's say I was like, oh, I have a iPhone 16 Pro, and then you go to present, it'll show it on the actual phone. Obviously, the thing that we designed is not optimized for mobile at all, so it looks insane. But that's how you can kind of see on these different devices, kind of like a simulation of what it would look like. And then in week 3, when we add a bunch of prototypes and animations, you can actually like click in here to kind of simulate going from one page to the next or stuff like that.